Illegal alien encounters down 87%. Sovereign wealth plan announced. Allies stepping up to the tariffs, i.e. meaning they're backing down. EO banning men and women's sports. Pretty great thing. And Army recruitment is up at a 15-year all high. We're just getting started. A lot to break down today. Mitzi, Mitz, welcome to the show, bro.
What's up, buddy? It's good seeing you, man. Hey, every week I feel like maybe this is the week where you run out of things to talk about.
I wish that was the case, man. But I mean, we have some hot topics again today. We're going to be looking at the drug cartels, what's been happening with Ukraine and Mexico, the big push with RFK's Make America Healthy Again. There are so many health statistics, and I think you guys are going to really enjoy this episode when we start talking about that, because Jeff has such a unique background in the health space. So I think you guys are going to love that. But we're going to show you some staggering statistics, what's been going on in America in terms of America's health and what RFK is trying to do to make it better. We're going to be looking at the Doge updates, big finances that were being shown. The receipts are still coming out, guys. The liberals are losing their mind. They're basically labeling Americans criminals for coming out with this information because Elon Musk is exposing it all and Trump is letting him run it the way he should, with complete transparency to the American public. And lastly, we're going to talk about some diplomatic resolutions, looking at the American landscape and where America is, some of the really cool things that are happening in America right now. But I kind of want to start off with a fun one, which is the drug cartels, looking at kind of the Ukraine, Mexico, really how they've been working together. And we touched on this a little bit last week, but even more information has come out in terms of how Ukraine has been using the billions of dollars, how half of however much money was sent to them, $300 billion more, probably more, has been sent to Ukraine. And Ukraine, Zelensky can't account for the weapons and or the money that they've been buying with it to fund the quote unquote Ukraine war against Russia. And the cartels are actually starting to report that they have openly been buying the weapons from Ukraine. And I want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, you have two enemies in the room, right? So who do we believe at what point? At what point do you stop believing people, and what point do you start believing folks, right? So you look at it from the perspective, it comes out, it's a little bit that comes out that says, hey, Zelensky's selling the arms that we've sold them, which, by the way, as of yesterday around 5 o'clock, Trump stopped sending arms to the Ukraine. And the cartels are buying those arms. So what it thinks, I think in my brain, is one of two things. A, Zelensky's correct, where he's not only receiving a half or a fraction of the money that was supposedly sent to Ukraine, so he needs to make up for the deficit on his side by taking an arsenal or a stockpile of weaponry and selling it then to the cartels. And now the cartels are running around with American rounds, rocket launchers, you name it. The cartels are running around with it, acting like a first world country. So that's on one side of the spectrum. The other side is simply this. At some point, we need to figure out who the true enemy is.
Yeah.
And until we figure out who the true enemy is, we're going to be in this really odd situation right now where people want us to support Ukraine and everything we've done for the past 4 years. But then the stuff we're sending to Ukraine is turning around and killing our innocent people in the United States. So Is it a fentanyl thing anymore, Jake? Or is it an arms race now? I guess that's the question.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that too. And you say the enemy. And I would be like, be careful who you say that to, because all of the rhinos that have been literally bending over and touching their toes for Zelensky to come in there and just give it to him, like they would lose their minds. And that's why they're freaking out. But this is factual. Weapons sold in Ukraine are going to the cartels on the black market. And the repercussions of this is massive. You have half of the billions. Now, guys, this is under the Biden administration. This is what Trump is stopping.
Walked into.
Yeah. Half of the billions and billions of dollars that has been sent to Ukraine indirectly was sent by the Biden administration. All this money, they were sending this to Ukraine. And Doge is catching this. They're like, well, where'd it go? We don't know. Well, it's accounting for that exact receipt. So the receipt of how much money was sent to Ukraine, half of that money, Doge is like, where did this part go? They don't know. Texas leadership is now reporting serious concern because they're one of the forefront fighters against the cartels, and they're expressing serious concern here. And they're saying no deportations on day one. This is what the Biden administration was saying. Day one, they walked in there, and Biden was like, there will be no deportations, which has created a massive problem. This problem right now, because of all the money, the no deportations, allowing illegal immigrants to cross into the United States, has created this wave, if you will, this ripple effect, this cascading effect that we're now having to clean up and get all these people out, get these drugs out, figure out where the money's been going. The profit center for the cartels is massive. When you really think about all this money we've sent to Ukraine has now been sent to the cartels, primarily the Sinaloa cartel, all these different gang members that are down in Mexico. But we're talking, here's where they make their profit. They make their profit in human trafficking.
That's correct.
In drugs, and then creating new drug centers across our border. This is American tax-paid dollars, guys, your tax dollars that have been sent to Ukraine to then get funneled and trafficked into the cartels across our border. And the Biden administration didn't give a dang about that money going to them or the American person in general.
So let's be, and there's a lot of uncovering what we're doing right now, but let's go back to this. Okay. I want to know in the cover of darkness as balloons are flying over and drones are flying over, we don't know where all that stuff's coming from or what's going on, and everybody's all confused and we're moving the Overton window like we talked about last week. I want to know how much money, because it seems to me that we're laundering money through Ukraine back to the cartels during the Biden administration, which means this, Jake. Why do you want millions and millions of illegal immigrants coming to this country? It's one of two things. It's to overthrow our own government or to give these folks Social Security numbers so they can do what? So they can vote, right?
Vote and take American jobs for sure.
Of course, that's happening right now. But in the grand scheme of things, in the universe we're living in right now, these cartels are assisting folks to get to the border, whether it's through train, through walking, through groups, through planes, and then they came to the country and we spread them out. Now, if you go back and look where we spread these folks out from, if you look at New York City or big metropolitan areas, New York City, Chicago, Atlanta, Los Angeles, Miami, Houston, okay? Once they got to those certain locations, how did they know where to put them on an airplane, then to fly them to Kansas City, Cincinnati, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Charleston, South Carolina? Because they needed more of those folks there because we had Social Security numbers. So we're gonna ramp them up Social Security numbers for one reason only, is the vote.
Yeah, and it's easy when they come across the border and then someone from the administration is like, oh, here's your map. Here's the city you go to. And oh, here's all your food stamps, or here's all this money in your pocket. And here's all these things you need to just survive for the next 6 months to a year. And oh, by the way, we're going to give you health care and you're going to continue to take American taxpayer dollars. But the statistics do not lie that by smuggling one person across the border, and again, guys, come full circle on this. Jeff and I always talk about, Mitz and I always talk about how there's always something going on behind the curtain. Well, all this money getting funneled to Ukraine, half of the billions of dollars that then get funneled to the cartel, it cost $8,000 to $12,000. So it costs $8,000 to $12,000, and that's massive for one illegal immigrant to come across the border. Times the 14 million people that have been reported to come across the American border. And do simple math, say it's $10,000 per person. That's $140 billion sent to illegal immigrants to cross our border and then take American money, okay? Get American health care. That's all stolen from the American taxpayer. And if people aren't pissed out about that, I just don't really understand. But then they continue to buy more weapons. They're buying more weapons from Ukraine.
Okay, so let's just say you and I from a cartel came to us and said, we're going to kill your family unless you get on this train and you go across the border. We're going to give you free health care. Let's just say this: free health care, a cell phone, a 5-star hotel, all the food you want to eat, and a prepaid credit card lined up for you. Okay. But there's a catch. And what's that catch, Jake? You're going to walk in with some fentanyl and you're going to sell it. And we have the people you're going to sell it to because they're already there. The cells are already in place. And we're going to distribute this throughout the country. You may think you're coming across the border for free and you're going to find new worlds. But there's a catch. It's kind of like the code we were talking about last week. There's a catch. Not everybody and their brother is going to jump on a train in the middle of the night and travel for 3 weeks to come across the border because they want to find great freedom. We know that the majority of these folks that are coming across the border, majority of them, if not 80 to 90% of them, are convicted felons, rapists, murderers.
Yep.
So what do these countries down in the South want to do? They clear their prisons out and get rid of them. They don't have to put up with it anymore.
Yeah.
So you send them across. But here's the deal, Jake. I'm going to send you across with your family. You got to do me a favor, though. You need to go to this cell in Albuquerque, and you're going to have a bunch of fentanyl lined up right there. And once you complete that process and you complete that job, do whatever you want. Live on the government's dime.
Yeah.
It's way deeper than I think we know, Jake.
Yeah, it's way deeper, but it's this cyclical system of like, okay, it's literally laundering money to one country to come to another organization. And that's happening all around the world because now Doge is catching it. But the Biden administration, this is what people miss. Trump, this, that. The Biden allowed the cartels to have 3 things. They allowed access to our country. They were allowed to make a profit, and they literally used it to arm themselves against the American public. And now it's interesting because the U.S. Special Forces has been approved by the Mexican Senate. Come on in, open the doors, take them out for us, eradicate the cartels. And they're literally designated as foreign terrorist organizations now, which is fantastic. I'm sure you guys have seen that in the last couple of weeks. But now, guys, we got ODA coming in. And if that doesn't scare the living bejesus out of MS, the Sinaloa, all the cartels, it doesn't matter. You have Green Berets, you have Special Forces, you got SEALs, you got Delta, the no-name guys coming in there that literally have one job. They're literally mercenaries for the United States who don't answer to anybody because they've had full approval from a different country. Say, hey, come on in, kick in the doors, take the names, and wipe these guys off the planet. Man, that's amazing because what you're going to see is massive drop, the numbers in drug use, the drugs being imported, and in general, the illegal immigrants, which we'll hit later on, how massive just the numbers in illegal immigration has dropped. But now we got Special Forces going in that are start cleaning up the whole thing, and it's just another great day in America.
But let me ask you a question from a military perspective. And we read the stories. I read the stories in the 4 years Biden administration was in the White House. How cautious are you and worried are you a little bit that we gave up a lot of our arsenal from weaponry standpoints, rounds, guns, bombs, missile, we can name them, right? We even gave up fighter jets for crying out loud. How do we know that are we prepared as a country to take on a cartel that is fully operational and is probably as strong as a lot of second world, first world countries?
Yeah, that's a really good point because I don't think people recognize that. That's a really good point. And that's what the Texas leadership was talking about because they were saying how well here's the thing. I'm gonna tell you guys right now, we will wipe them off the face of the earth. Without a question, without a shadow of doubt, I have met dozens and dozens of these guys. They're on a different planet, these guys. Their skill base, their thought process, who they are as individuals, as a team, these guys are unrivaled. These Operation Detachment Alpha, these Special Forces units we have, guys, they are no joke. They will wipe them off the face of the earth. The question is we're going up against a different type of enemy who is now armed with our modern day weapons. They're not just sitting here pulling up some random Kalashnikov trying to smoke some guy off the face of the earth. It's a different battle when you're going up against our type of tech. Again, they're not as trained on it, but they do have our weapons. It is something to consider, but I will tell you firsthand, having worked with these guys, having flown them around the world, we're going to wipe them off the face of the earth. But it is a different battle. You're going up the same type of weaponry, and that is concerning, right? So I think it's a huge win for America. But I want you guys to understand just the seriousness of the matter, that this money, there is so much more to this cyclical laundering of money, of the taxpayer American dollars that are going around. And then you see funny things like the Mexican president. This is a random one-off, but I thought it was funny that the Mexican president was kind of ticked off about the Gulf of America thing, and all these libbies are losing their mind because it's the Gulf of America. And you look on Chrome or Google or whatever, and it says that. But, this is interesting, Jeff. The Democrats weren't crazy when people wanted to change the name of military bases, or when the Democrats changed the name of our sports teams, or when they changed syrup bottles and pancakes, when they changed our statutes, our genders, our pronouns.
Excellent point.
But also Democrats, you can't change the Gulf of America. I mean, dude, you can rebut almost every single thing that these liberals are trying to push out. And I say this every week. It didn't matter, man. If Trump cured cancer, they would still find something wrong with whatever he is doing. And the fact that he's naming something so patriotic, most people, you ask any person and they're probably like, who cares, But the liberals are incessant on making sure that Trump is the enemy because he wants to do something extremely patriotic for the American people and because he can. Like, who cares? You know what I mean?
Well, when you're out of things to complain about, when you really realize, like your average, I guess that my thought process is this anymore. How can there be an average liberal in the United States right now? And here's what I mean by that.
I don't know.
The liberals who are out there making all the noise for Gulf of America and what Doge is doing, and Elon's not elected, and Trump's bringing in his pals to do all this stuff, they're upset because they're lawyering up and selling houses in D.C.
Yes.
Because they're tied back to the cash. Follow the dollar, Jake. How can you be a normal middle-class Democrat who has liberal ideals right now in the United States and not think what's going on right now is not a good thing?
Yeah. You wonder why so many moderates flipped to the conservative space. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard is the perfect example, a Democrat for decades, man. And she's like, this doesn't make sense. How many Democrats are you seeing coming out that are like, they're just like, dude, this isn't what we stood for years. And so many people flip the switch. But like I told you, these liberals, it's either, man, they're getting paid off by somebody, but to continually try to just fearmonger and create this false truth wherever they can. If they're getting paid off, dude, I know a bunch of them. They're big time influencers, man, and they're getting paid off. Or they're just so deep in the cause, man, that when you're so deep in the cause, the moment truth comes out of your mouth, they literally evaporate into just nonsense. And so they're in so deep that they can't leave. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They can't go. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, I guess it's, if I told just an average run-of-the-mill, living in my neighborhood Democrat, Doge is finding all this useless spending, and they're going to say, what does it mean for me? Because that's what liberals typically do. Well, what it means for you, if I told you in a year from now, we're going to have a flat tax income, maybe it's 10 to 15%. Okay, great. And potentially, we're going to do away with property tax, whether that be a percentage of how much you own on your property to the point where you own it all outright and you just flat out don't pay it anymore. How many average run-of-the-mill, middle-class Democrats would say that's bullshit and that's a bad idea?
Yeah. Well, most of them can't speak intelligently on it at all anyways. But I mean, it's a good point.
Is it fair to ask, though, Jake, is it fair to ask this question? Everybody talks about it all the time. The mega Republican push has pretty much eliminated the grand old party, GOP.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's gone. Right.
Is there a 1980s, 70s, 60s? Does that Democratic Party exist anymore? Or does the new Democratic Party, is that just, if you think about it for a second, I hate to use the word terrorist for this, but is that our homeland terrorists that we're seeing day in and day out? When you see these protesting and you see everybody up in arms about how much money they're saving and how it's against what we stand for, and then they'll go back to the abortion piece and it's my body and all that. It's like we're recycling, right? Black Lives Matter, women's rights, and all these sort of things. Is the old Democratic Party, is it done?
Yeah.
The Union Democratic Party, which was built by unions, right?
Yeah, I think it is done. Just like the real Republican side is being transformed into something else. You're seeing the liberals, but I think that the liberals are so far left with all of the wokeness that is in, I'm trying using buzzwords here, but it is with the liberalism, not promoting the pronouns and the transgender movements, and a lot of they're so profound that it's like they can't go back. And I think they're trying to figure out how to go back. They're trying to maybe not go back. Either some of them are going deeper. They're just digging their graves, not realizing that for example, the more you push an agenda on American people, we're going to push back. We didn't like that Britain did it in 1776, so we're going to kick some teeth in. It's the same kind of idea, guys. Like you push something on people. It's not the fact that people can be and do whatever they want. Do whatever you want. Be whatever you want to be. But when you're pushing an agenda on someone and forcing them to believe and see it and look at it all the time, it's in our movies and TV and radio, and it's in every article, and it's all those stupid Grammys and transgenderism matters and all this kind of stuff. Americans are fed up with that. They're like, live your own life. Don't push it on everybody else. And with that, I want to jump in to make America healthy again, guys, because we could go off and forever. But I want to read some staggering statistics, guys. And this is why RFK is going to do such amazing things in the health space for Americans. I'm going to read some statistics, Jeff. I want to get your feedback on it. 6 out of every 10 adults have a chronic condition, and 4 in every 10 have at least 2 or more chronic conditions, and those are serious chronic conditions. The U.S. has the highest cancer incident rates across the 204 countries. Asthma and autoimmune diseases are more common in the U.S. than the rest of the world. In 2022, 30 million, which is 41% of children had at least one health condition. Allergies, asthma, autoimmune diseases, autism. This is crazy. Autism affects 1 in 36 children. It has increased from the 1 to 4 out of 10,000 that was back in the 80s. And right there, I'm going to take a pause and get your thoughts as an expert in the healthcare field, what you're expecting to see, and what is your reaction to those crazy statistics, man.
Yeah, well, you go back to the the late 60s and to the early 70s. I believe babies that were born got on an average 2 to 3 vaccines.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what Kennedy's talking about right now, Junior's talking about right now. If you look at the number of vaccines from Gardasil all the way down, the babies born in the United States right now, and many people have talked about this before, are upwards of 25 to 30 vaccinations before the age of 10.
That's disgusting.
Okay. You look at autism, for example. You just said 1 in 36. Autism was non-existent in the 1930s and 40s.
I know.
It was non-existent. And that's a scary, scary fact. Now you're looking at, fast forward to right now, where you're looking at the COVID vaccination, all the data that's coming out right now, which is very scary from Moderna and Pfizer.
Yeah.
The heart complications from that. But I go back to the chronic disease stuff you're talking about too. So I think we have a twofold issue right here. I think we have a twofold issue where if I walk into the pediatrician's office and I have a brand new bundle of joy with me, and the pediatrician puts a piece of paper in front of me and says, this is what we need to do. They have to get vaccinated at certain times, 0 to 6 months, 6 to 12, 12 to 18, and 18 and older, right? Any parent who's never been a parent before is going to say, okay, we're going to do that because I trust you.
Yeah.
It goes a lot deeper than that. And I think it goes deeper than that is look how many people, and what Doge is finding right now, how many people are on the take with the CDC, the National Institute of Health, on and on and on, that a pharmaceutical company can walk into Jake's office and say, here's the deal, man. There's really no data that we have out there. We just made a whole lot of these vaccines, and we need to sell these vaccines. And they say, you know what we'll do? The hell with it. We're going to put it on the schedule from 6 to 12 months for infants, and that's the way we're going to sell them. By the way, do you have kickback for me? That's the vaccine problem as a whole. That's a universe 20,000-foot view. The other piece is this. Chronic diseases are rampant. Let's take away mental illness right now. Heart disease, which we can throw stroke in there, myocardial infarctions, which are heart attacks. You throw into that mix right now, cholesterol, everything dealing with the blood. You're talking about asthma. You're talking about little things that you didn't hear about kids having asthma and all these problems they had, LDLs and HDLs and cholesterol and all that sort of thing. When do you think that became really popular? It became popular about 25 to 30 years ago when 3 big pharmaceutical companies came out and said, we have products called statins.
Yeah.
And statins are going to lower your LDL, your bad cholesterol. Where back in the old days, you ate right. You ate out of an iron skillet. You got the iron you needed into your body, right? Without the use of taking medicine. I think a lot of that has to do with the way we eat. I think it has a lot to do with what we're doing in society as a whole right now. You look out your window right now at any neighborhood, even when it's nice out, you rarely see kids playing at all outside because they're tied into the phones and the iPads and all that sort of thing too. But I think what it really boils down to too is we're in a quick society, Jake, and it's going to kill us. It's ultimately going to wipe us off the face of the earth. From quick Jiffy Lubes to running through the drive-thru to running through Chipotle to DoorDash and everything that we need. And here's what I'm going to say, and it might even not be, it probably is not very popular at all. We're in a society right now that we're timed up on two big times daily during our life, each and every day, that we think we're supposed to eat.
Yeah.
Lunch and dinner. And society has made it so easy for us to order whatever we want because it's going to show up on your doorstep with a guy taking a picture of it, that we have no care at all about the nutritional value or the healthy foods that we're putting in and out of our body and what we're ordering. I think those are two huge problems we're having. Vaccinations, number one, lifestyle, number two. Two parents working from home. Is mom sitting in the kitchen with an apron on making dinner anymore?
Yeah.
They're not, right? So the social media is raising us. Physicians and doctors and NIH and CDC is telling us what we should put in our body to prevent disease. And it's ultimately driving the cost of our healthcare up into billions. And it's crazy.
And they're investigating a lot of this, and RFK was looking into this because a lot of the doctors, like, they're not being prosecuted because the doctors were being taught to
coming out of school being told what to do.
They are. And the doctors are being told, prescribe this. This is what you do. You don't pull up the scalpel. You don't start opening people up. You prescribe medicine. How do you sustain the problem? You can't sustain it. We're just going to try to suppress the problem. And that's what they do. So then take it a step forward and I want your input. 18% of teens. Now we're looking at teens and adults. 18% of teens suffer from fatty liver disease. People are getting fat in America. Like, we're the fattest that you can be. We're so obese. 30% of teenagers, Jeff, are pre-diabetic. 30%. And more than 40% are considered overweight and or obese. Those are teenagers. Then we look at adults, young adults, say early 20s. 77% of young adults do not even qualify. This is sad. Don't qualify for military service without a waiver now because they're so overweight or they have some kind of condition that doesn't allow them to serve. They're overweight. They've had former drug use. And I'm not talking just using drugs, but like prescription medications that prohibit them from doing the things you need to do in the military. And or let's tack on the reason 77% of young adults can't qualify for the military is because they have mental and physical health issues, depression, anxiety. So we're like, bro, you're kind of off your rocker. We're not even going to be able to let you in. These anxiety SSRIs are too intense. You got to get off that stuff. 90% of America's $4.5 trillion healthcare expenditure is directed at chronic and mental health conditions. So the U.S. ultimately spends twice per capita what other countries spend on their entirety in healthcare because we're fat, we got mental issues, we're on all kinds of medications, and now we can barely fill people into our military because America's just so overweight, so unhealthy.
Let me go back to a point you just made before. Doctors coming out, and I know a lot of doctors, and I know a lot of doctors are great friends of mine, and they spend a lot of time and money becoming a physician. The rate right now of internal medicine and family practitioners in the United States is down by like 70%. It's because by the time you're done with school and you spend $400,000 to $500,000 on medical school, all the way from undergrad in through medical school, and you come out and you have to go work for a health network, and keep this in mind, I'm coming back to health network in a minute, and you come and work for a health network, they're going to pay you between $120,000 and $175,000 a year, but you have $500,000 in student loan debt. Okay. So who do you think you're going to listen to? Well, you're going to listen to the CDC, the National Institute of Health, telling you what prescriptions to write from mental health all the way down to chicken pox or all the way down to a damn rash you have on your ass. You're going to do it because that's what you were taught to do. And those are the quote unquote guidelines. I'm going to stop there and I'm going to come over to the health network now. Okay. I sat in this, I lived it, and I breathed it. Okay. When you go to the hospital, and this is pure in fact with my mom 2005, when my mom was deathly ill and she ultimately succumbed to pancreatic cancer. Okay. Mm-hmm. Those hospitals have worked deals out with the pharmaceutical companies. You rob Peter to pay Paul. We want to get this product on formulary in the health network. Okay. So I'm going to give you this product very, very inexpensively, but you have to put my level 3 antibiotic on there as a tier 1. So there's tiers in the hospital networks, tier 1, 2, and 3, just like your insurance, right? Your insurance is the same way. So a hospital will say, well, hell, we can make a lot of money off product X because product X brings us $125 to $130 per prescription in the hospital, both inpatient and outpatient. And we're going to add this kind of a shitty antibiotic as tier 2 when they fail on one or the other. So now the doctors really don't have to make decisions. There was a thing that came out about 15 years ago, Jake. It's Epic and Cerner. The electronic health record came out. And with the electronic health record came this. You plug in your name and then you go to the doctor. The doctor doesn't really even have to turn their back and look at you. They can ask you a series of questions, look on the algorithm on the computer screen in front of them and say, ... You need an SSRI. You seem depressed. You have mental illness. We're going to mark the chart for that. And by the way, you have a sinus infection. We're going to throw you a Z-Pack because that's what's on formulary and that's what's tier 1 on your insurance. So at the end of the day, eliminate the family practice pediatricians and internal medicine physicians.
Yeah.
And just have the algorithm tell you what you need.
I mean, you don't think that's where it's going, that AI is eventually going to be able to eliminate that? Like, oh, I have these problems going. Like, think about it just in general, how much has gone to telemedicine. I don't even need to go into the hospital because literally someone's going to do that. And he's sitting looking at another screen, the way I'm looking at a screen right now. And he's like, oh, I'm going to prescribe you this. What are you kind of feeling this way? Even if you weren't, you can lie to get anxiety medicine, to get depression. You can lie telemedicine now. You can say, these are the things. You could go up and Google what your symptoms are and then tell them, oh, I'm feeling this way. Or maybe you had a bad run-in with a young lady and all of a sudden you got something you need to take care of. Hey, this is my symptoms, You don't have to go in an emergency clinic. I can do it telemedicine.
But I'm going to tell you something, though, from a payer perspective. Who do you think the biggest utilizers and developers of telemedicine are? Who do you think they are? They're the big insurance companies.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Right? They're the big insurance companies because here's what they're saying. Boy, if Jake keeps on having this sinus infection or ear infection, let's get to him from telemedicine so at least we can start him on a therapy to get rid of the infection because, man, we don't want to pay for a ruptured eardrum.
Let me take it a step further. And this is what's really interesting about telemedicine, and I hope RFK kind of wipes this off the planet here, but when you go to telemedicine too, you could have a copay if you're on some kind of insurance plan and you may pay $30 for just going in to see the doc and say, hey, I need to get on some prescription medicine. It's $3 at your local CVS. No big deal. But say, hey, I want to avoid going to the doctor. I want to avoid going after in the stores to pick up that stuff. I'm just going to do telemedicine and I'm going to see what they say. Like there's telemedicine companies. I've used these in the past and it's sad. $130, $140, $150 to go and see a doctor online. People are like, well, that's a lot easier than me having to drive down to the hospital or the ER or the urgency clinic and then go talk to a doc. I'll do that instead and then just have them prescribe it and I'll walk 2 feet down to my local Publix to pick up my prescription because it's so much easier. So now it makes sense that these insurance companies are doing this because they're like, hey, Americans are so lazy that they'll pay more just to get that screen time, to get that prescription, which then they're going to be stuck on and addicted to for the rest of their lives for another chronic condition.
Yeah, but you think about it for a second. I just talked about the quick society. We want everything right now. Yeah. Because we can look up anything right now on our smartphones, right? I'll tell you, telemedicine was made very, very popular for your rural areas, people who didn't have access. So access was key with a big A, right? What happened between 2014 and 2020? What happened was, Jake, you had a pandemic that went through this country, right? And you couldn't get in to see your doctor, right? It was very, very difficult to do so. So they
Yeah.
had to do something to keep to keep them follow the money. They had to do
Yeah.
something to keep the trail of money going. So what
Yeah.
do? You can jump on your cell phone right now, pull up telemedicine, say I have an ear infection. Here are my symptoms from it. I know it's an ear infection because I can't hear it in my ear.
Yeah.
And they're going to get an antibiotic to you right away.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the point you made before about urgent cares and ERs. One of the biggest costs it spends right now on any health plan, whether you're a small organization, you're a large conglomerate, Boeing, Delta Airlines, right,
Yeah.
is they are trying to curtail that people do not use the ER as their family practice, pediatrician, and internal medicine physician. They will raise the copay on ERs up to $750 to $800 to walk in with just something that can be handled with telemedicine, urgent care, just going to your family doctor. You look at Walgreens and Kroger's around here in the area where I live, they got smart with it. They got really smart with it. What did they do? They threw clinics into their buildings.
Yep.
And then what did they do with the clinics? Who owns the clinics? The health network. So now the health network's in now with the pharmacy. You see the game we're playing?
Well, it's funny because no joke, and you bring that up. I literally have an appointment with a doctor that is inside of like a local Publix pharmacy. You know, I have an appointment to go talk, and it's like, how much easier can they make it for the lazy American, right? And I'm hoping, guys, we're bringing this up because we're trying to show the transparency within the healthcare space to kind of show you how bad it is right now in America. I mean, let alone, and we'll jump to the next topic here, but just to get an appointment with your local family practitioner is so difficult, man. You're months out. Or if you want a specialty doc, good luck. Because,
dermatology.
oh my gosh, man, you'll spend months before you even see a doctor because so many people need care, because so many people are dealing with chronic conditions, even acute conditions that just spur up. I feel bad for people that have like acute conditions that pop up out of nowhere and they get sick really bad or something happens. You can't, unless you're going to urgency or ER where they're going to make their big time money, you can't go see a local practitioner because it'll take months. And then you're sitting there with whatever kind of ailment and you're just struggling to see a doctor.
But I'll go back to it from this point too. And you made a great point. The reason we are so much different in the United States of America from a healthcare perspective, yes, we're unhealthy. Yes, we're fat. Yes, we have fatty livers. Yes, we have mental illness. Yes, we have cholesterol problems. We do. The reason we're so different, though, is we have we have the access.
Yeah.
To give you an example, Jake, if you fail a stress test in Canada, the biggest physician who makes probably the most amount of money in the United States of America is a physician that lives across the border from Canada in Buffalo, New York, who's a cardiologist, who's a cash pay only cardiologist, Jake. When you fail a stress test in Canada, which means something's going on with your heart, you wait anywhere from 9 to 14 months to get in to see a cardiologist in Canada. Or are you going to drive across the border into Buffalo, pay the guy cash, and get treated? That's the difference between universalized healthcare and what we are sitting on right now. I'm going to back it up too, because everybody will have and try to make this point. The United States and Japan currently are the only real two big countries that do R&D. So from a perspective of everybody who sits in the United States for all these new drugs and new therapies that are out there, and some of them have saved countless lives. Some of them are useless. All the other countries then are just saying, oh, it looks great to us. Give us the formulation, and we'll make that said product in our country and give it away for free. But R&D is in the billions and sometimes the trillions for a lot of these pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah.
And the United States and Japan are pretty much the only ones doing the R&D on that. But it really boils down to access. There is zero access in universalized healthcare. Zero access. So we do have that going for us.
Yeah, and we're hopeful, guys. This is why RFK is going to be reworking this entire. I mean, these are staggering statistics. That's why we're talking about it. So you guys really understand the landscape of where the health of America is. It is not good. I mean, you've all experienced it if you've lived here for a hot minute. But RFK is on the trail. And with that being said, I want to jump into Doge, because now you have the richest man in the world doing all the dirty work for Trump. The Democrats are doing everything in their power to separate them. The guys, this is Doge we're talking about here, the DOGE, and they're doing just fine. Let's put it that way. Trump and Elon Musk are good friends, and I think this is really cool because there's a lot more information that's coming out. If you check out the Doge calculator daily, how much money they're saving the American taxpayer. Well, you found out that the Social Security chief just resigned over Doge, requesting because they were requesting, because Doge was requesting access to the recipient data. So Social Security chief said, peace, I'm out. You're asking about this information. Can't answer the questions. This is the continuous, repetitive theme from the liberals that they start to make you look like a criminal when you start exposing the receipts. Who in their right mind questions when you're bringing out receipts on just undocumented, laundered spending, if that is the American taxpayers' money, and they're getting pissed off about it? I mean, they just found out that the U.S. Treasury can't track $4.7 trillion in payments. Medicare spent $2.7 trillion overseas to people ineligible for health care, and the Pentagon just randomly lost $2.5 trillion in the defense spending budget. It's like, what? Social Security sends $100 billion to people who are dead or don't have an identity. From the ages of 0 to 80, $40 billion was Social Security sent to people who are dead or just not real people. This is unbelievable. This is what Doge is finding out every single day. The Department of Education spends $50 billion on making your kids gay or turning them or some kind of social agenda. And USAID spends another $50 billion on trying to make your kids, on making everyone else gay or social agendas. So you wonder why they want to get rid of the DOE. Everyone's like, we need the Department of Education. I said, no, we don't. I was like, that came about in the 60s. And what was it? Jimmy Carter, I believe it was Jimmy Carter that actually created the DOE. And they started pushing these agendas slowly and steadily. And over half of a decade, you start seeing them in full and fruition. Now they're rooted everywhere. But guys, these individual line items, this is what Doge is catching, and also why they're eliminating parts of this. All of what I just talked about is 1/3 of the national debt. And it's only been 1 month of the Trump administration, 1 month, and they could almost be fixing 1/3 of the national debt by all this ridiculous spending, these payments they can't track, Social Security going out the wazoo to whoever and dead people. It's mind-blowing, but yet the liberals are still pushing back on it, and it's kind of mind-blowing, you know?
Question. Are we prepared to start having the conversation that the federal government is nothing more than organized crime? At the end of the day, are we prepared for that? Because the money's missing. People don't care. They turned a blind eye. We put smoke screens in front of them. Hurricanes, fires in California, balloons flying over the country, endless wars, drones flying around the country. Let's take their attention off of it while I scratch you another check for $1.2 billion. Let's go back to this real quick. Everyone wants to blame Trump for the egg prices. I think this is very interesting.
Yeah,
you and I talked about this before, right?
Good.
I'm going to back this up by telling you this. It takes between 22 and 23 weeks to get a chicken to be an adult enough to be able to lay eggs. During the Biden administration, you saw it. How many chicken ranches, chicken organizations, and chicken companies all of a sudden mysteriously caught fire? Well, I'm going to tell you, 20 million chickens perished with either fires or bird flu or just randomly died overnight, okay? That's 22 to 24 million eggs that were taken out of our supply chain. I just got finished telling you it takes 22 to 24 weeks to get a chicken to the life of a chicken to be able to lay eggs. And we're blaming flipping Trump, and he's only been in office for 4 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where everyone's like, oh, the prices. I'm like, bro, you have another 18 weeks before we have chickens that are actually laying decent eggs again in organic grass-fed communities, whatever, free-range communities. And so they're like, oh, the prices. Bro, you can always clap back on a liberal with factual information. They're like, well, I'm like, bro, it stemmed from Biden. And this isn't here to be like, because I hate when people are like, well, the last administration is always going to do something. Except this administration is doing everything to correct everything that was wrong, and is also showing as being transparent with the American public about it. And which is huge, because you're talking about prices. Now I was paying like $6.99 for eggs. So I don't know where people are getting their eggs
Right.
For a dozen. They were like $12, but that's a great point, because where it is still expensive, people just like, well, Trump's president, it's his fault. I'm like, that's inept. That makes no sense at all. You're very uneducated on the topic. And that's why we're trying to be transparent with our listeners here. And then you have things like this. This is, they talk about Doge, but Donald Trump went to Daytona. He went to the races. Yeah. You had a bunch of libbies like Harry Sisson and all these guys go and say, oh, well, that must have cost millions of dollars, blah, blah, blah. I was like, dude, first of all, he's the president, bro. He's going to one of the most patriotic events you can go to in the United States, like a Daytona Raceway race. Like, bro, but I get it. I get it, Harry. I get it, libbies. You're upset. But Doge is kind of busy, because Doge is busy revealing $4.7 trillion of missing expenditures for the American people, just taxpayer money that is completely untraceable. So the fact that Trump spent some money to go to a very patriotic event, but that they're still whining about it. But oh, wait, it probably cost Trump millions of dollars. But one average flight for Taylor Swift to go across country is $1,500 in fuel. People are like, well, she pays for it herself. No, her fans pay for it. And it's also a $1,500 bag of gas. That is not easy, with now fumes going across the sky and all the stuff that they're worried about, dude.
When people complain about Trump spending money going to the Daytona 500 or the Super Bowl, does anyone ever say, but he doesn't take a dime from the federal government and pay? Right? That's number one. Number two, let's be honest here too, okay? How many vacations did Biden take when he took Air Force One up to Delaware and sat on the beach?
I felt like he never took his face off a thing.
You mentioned something last week. I think I want you to mention again about the Marine who stands outside the Oval Office.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Yes.
Talk about that again, because that's important to know.
Well, and it's another thing that Caroline, the press secretary, mentions almost every day, that the work that Trump has been doing when you're working inside of the White House, either in the Oval Office or somewhere directly in one of the offices, you always have a Marine standing outside the Oval Office door. Almost nonstop, you will not see a Marine leaving the White House in the Oval Office area, because Trump is in there working nearly 24/7. They're saying he sleeps 3 to 4 hours a day. You've heard Dana White talk about it. I don't know how this guy continues to operate, but he is pressing for the American people, does not stop working. Under the Biden administration, there was almost never a Marine there, almost never. Because he was sniffing kids and he was hiding in his basement and he was falling off of bikes and upstairs, and he had no idea where he was. He had a whole bunch of elites running the organization instead of him, and he wasn't there. So that's the difference, about what he's actually doing, So the fact that he makes the time to show up to an American race, he's even went to and had this really nice speech at the USA hockey game against Canada tonight. Right. And this is February 21st. And he couldn't make it to the game, but he's going to called him, said some really nice words, because did you ever see Biden even do that? He was non-existent. So you mentioned this, and let's talk some more Doge. DC housing prices fell by 36%. They're finding that there's about 15,000 houses that are now buyable, and because they've gone up for sale. You're finding a huge spike in RICO laws, like criminal defense attorneys, because everyone's freaking out. Statutes of limitations, offshore bank accounts are being revealed by the liberals, and they're freaking out. NATO defense spending, this is what Doge is finding out, that we're just sending billions of dollars to countries, and we're not getting, here's the thing, guys. It's one thing to send a country money. Everyone always says, like, America can help everybody. I'm like, bro, forget that, man. Take care of the American people. We're spending $56 billion to France, $19 billion to Spain, $68 billion to Germany, $65 billion to UK, $15 billion to Turkey, $16 billion to the Netherlands. The list is nonstop. We're sending billions of dollars to all these countries. And what do we get in return?
Nothing.
Eggs, celery. Thank you for nothing. But you're seeing all this useless spending. And we're bringing this up, guys, because we want to be transparent with you on where all this money is going. But I just think it's funny because everyone makes a stink about Trump going to a race and all these things he's doing for the American people, but yet he has not stopped for the American working man and woman and child since he's been in office. And it's literally been a month and the liberals are losing their mind.
The way, this is probably for another episode. I just want to bring this up. I just read around 11:30 today, one of the biggest criminal defense attorneys quit on P. Diddy less than 24 hours after Cash Patel was put in. Think about that for a second.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up because that's our next talking point. I think it's perfectly aligned with what's going on because I think you're going to see a lot of tribunals. I think you're going to see a lot of people go to prison. Right now, what they're doing is they're just like, you find a fossil and you find like one part of the bone. You're like, oh my gosh, like there's a whole thing in there. Or you're looking at it like that. Oh my gosh, bro! You're looking at like the where that Titanic hit this little piece of ice, but underneath is this massive mountain full of just blah. Like that's what's going to happen. So let's finish off here with just a little bit of look at guys where the American landscape is right now. What's been happening this week that has been so powerful? And you mentioned Cash Patel. He's the director of the FBI. So now you're starting to see things like the lawyers for P. Diddy or whoever else. People are like, oh my gosh, I gotta run for the hills. All these hilarious memes because Cash Patel is about to bring down the house, much like Tulsi Gabbard is for the intelligence community. And I think it's gonna be pretty huge.
It is. I don't know what. I guess you go first with just, and it's sad to say this, but you go first with timeline, right? So
yeah.
Do we start with JFK or do we skip over that? And do we go to 9/11 or do we skip over that? Do we go to Epstein? Let's go there. So let's go Epstein first. And then since they sound so very similar, then we'll just go from Epstein to Diddy.
Yeah.
How crazy is the world we're living in right now that you have all these powerful people, not even to mention that the true birth certificate of Obama came out, right?
Yeah.
But there's so much going on right now that what Doge is actually, we're making it like every day that you tell me we saved another $1 billion, it's just like, that's amazing to me, But at what point this Epstein thing's going to come out, Jake, and it's going to ruin a lot of lives?
It's coming, man. What I'm thinking is that the administration is just figuring out a way to consolidate the information in a well summarized manner to deliver it to the American people because they've been so transparent. I'm not worried they're not going to say anything about some of these really big incidents, 9/11, JFK, all those things. I just think it's how they're going to deliver it to the American public because it takes time to swallow a horse pill that big and then be able to digest it and send it out to the American public.
Are you worried at all? Are you worried at all about just the blowback of how much information is going to be in front of us? You start talking about like the Tom Hankses of the world, ex-leaders of the world, every person we looked up to as a kid, movie stars, athletes, rock stars, Diddy, the people he surrounds himself with. Yeah. And it's not just like, hey, look, they were doing some bad shit.
Yeah.
They were doing some things, dude, that you rot in hell for.
Yeah.
Like people should be put to death for it.
Well, I think some people will, man. Like I really do. I think it's going to come out. Let's look at I'm going to go through some things that's been happening this week if you guys haven't been tracking. Secretary of State Rubio, he's agreed to restore diplomatic operations with Russia. So that's huge, man. I mean, you've been talking about this phony freaking war between Ukraine and Russia. And I say phony not to dismiss the people that were wrongfully killed. And I want to say killed by Zelensky because Zelensky, guys, I'm going to come out and call what it is. Zelensky's a turd. Okay. And I'm going to back it up with a lot of information here, but they're reestablishing respective embassies in DC and Moscow so we can have communications and appointing a high level team to negotiate this Ukraine war. And you already saw Trump went and Trump slams Zelensky this week. A couple days ago, he went and slammed Zelensky for basically being a turd and saying, hey, we're still going to end the war. But he had discussions with Putin before he talked to Zelensky. And people are like, oh my gosh, especially all the rhinos. You want to know why Zelensky's a turd? And I'll tell you why. He's in his 6th year of a 5-year term right now. He declared martial law in February of 2022, banning all elections so he could stay in power. That's kind of messed up. He's banned 11 political parties. He passed a law in 2022 to censor journalists and only have one government station that promotes their media.
That's right.
Journalists who investigated Zelensky's corruption were then conscripted and then sent to the front to die against the Russians. So this is the kind of leader that's been going on right now. Even Saddam Hussein had elections, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
I was out there in Iraq and Afghanistan. He had elections. So Trump called Zelensky. He literally, quote, Trump called Zelensky a dictator without elections. So, we look at the rhinos, all the people just like bending over, taking it from, from Zelensky every time he showed up in his little sweatshirt and his khaki pants to just give these billions of dollars, the Biden administration giving this money to him. This is why Zelensky's a turd. You don't think the president, why would I want to talk to Zelensky? I want to talk to the guy that invaded the other country, Putin, who has way more power and influence than Zelensky ever did. He literally was just conned all of the Biden administration to take all this money.
Did he?
Yeah. Well, yeah, did he? You're right.
Or
right.
Did he say, hey, you're going to be the middleman for this operation we're going to call money laundering? Here's a question. At the end of the day, what's the difference, name it if you could, between North Korea and Ukraine and the political landscape?
Not much based off of leadership.
Zero.
Yeah.
One party, one person controlling media.
Everything.
One leader, right? There's no difference.
Yeah, communism 101.
Right. It is. It's communism 101. You can go all the way back to Germany in the 40s, right? There's no difference right there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we talked about it. Let's hit some of these last ones. The CBS guys this week, if we're talking about American landscape, CBS signs Megyn Kelly and Candace Owens for $700 million for a morning show that is now going to be competing with The View and Whoopi Goldberg and all her cronies. I mean, I can't wait. Can you imagine Candace Owens, Megyn Kelly just dropping hammers, man? So I hope you guys are looking out for that. The defense of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem announced that transactional multi-million-dollar ad campaign targeting illegal aliens. So the illegal aliens, which now they're averaging on entry, is below 100 a day. If that, it's in the negatives. She's reinforcing all that, and liberals are losing their mind because if you didn't see this week that we had another DEI, another plane crash, everyone's like, Trump, Trump, Trump. And it's funny because Delta, this is an article that came out from Delta. Trump's trying to eliminate DEI, this racist movement to basically bring in anyone who's unqualified to have a job based off race, color, and identity and whatever else you want to be. Delta came out with an article that said Delta Airlines stands firm on DEI commitments amid federal rollbacks, i.e. meaning Delta was flipping the bird to the administration saying, we're going to keep doing what we want to do with DEI, have unqualified people in the administration, keep the people that the Biden administration kept around to be in the FAA and all these other organizations to defy Trump's executive orders. And now that's why you're seeing Pam Bondi come out with like this spear and she's just going and jabbing all the organizations because they're not adhering to what Trump has been telling them to do.
Let's go back to, you talk about CBS. That's a shock. If you think about it, that's a true shock. But why is that? What's the difference between what CBS is doing right now and what Bud Light has done? It's the same thing.
Yeah.
CBS realized 70 million people voted for Donald Trump. 70 million people want the truth. 70 million people pay a lot of bills for CBS. So we better do something, right, to mold ourselves after, if not in the middle, or if not as far right as we think, but maybe somewhere in the middle as a moderate, to say, you know what, we'll start a show here. We'll spend a tremendous amount of money, and hopefully we'll get eyeballs on that. Because we know damn well CNN's dying on the vine, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're doing the same exact thing, the same playbook. And I would be shocked if you didn't tell me some big marketing and advertising agency in New York City doesn't work for both Bud Light and CBS. You're going to see more and more and more of this happening every week. We're not going to run out of things to talk about yet.